Yeah, I think, my understanding and my hope is that the game will go ahead, and obviously you're prepared accordingly. I think everybody, myself, the organisation, the players, absolutely don't want what happened in the last window. I think we all felt it. I came out of it and felt like I'd been run over by a bus. So if I felt like that, I'm not sure how the players felt, but I think there's a common goal to resolve whatever can be resolved short term, going into this window. And my understanding, even just speaking to the players, there's a real will and want to make this happen and get back to the football. But I think, obviously for that to happen, there's still some negotiations and talks happening. But so far, players' flights are booked, everything like that, and preparing, to play against France. And I think they're in the middle of appointing the French coach, I believe. They play, I think it's Colombia, midway through our camp. And so getting that game is going to be critical even more now based on a new coach. We've done the scouting we can, but with a coach coming in so close to a World Cup, if I was that coach, I would very quickly put my stamp on it to go into a World Cup. So that's going to be a critical game for us to review and very quickly turn around for our game plan going into the France game. The short-term asks of, obviously April window, the World Cup, and the September window, the budget cuts that happened, I had to resubmit the original budget, and my understanding is that they've been approved for April, the World Cup, and September. And so I hope that means that, we're back to what we were before those budget cuts happened, and I've been reassured that, and I think the players will receive the same reassurance on the short-term asks. But I think obviously the players are also pushing for the wider programme beyond that, as well as the youth programme. So short-term, yes, I'm able to bring in the players that I need to, the staff, and prepare properly for this World Cup. I think that's the most important thing, and the most urgent to me right now is to have the short-term needs to be able to go into that World Cup with what we need. I don't think it's possible, because the NWSL only releases the players for the 26th. Us and the US have had that confirmed, and so we'll only go in to camp on the 26th of June. There's no June FIFA window, and so we need to get ourselves to Australia, where we've got behind closed doors game, or games. We're working on the 2nd. I don't think, this late in the piece we can design a home game to tick that box. I think the window in which to do it was probably the April window. So we'll go in, get ourselves prepared. I think the best thing for the team is to do that. We'll be based in Australia.
If you could pull the curtain back, I guess, a little bit for us with naming 25 players to a camp where most of the time you're getting at least 2 matches, so you could theoretically have a completely brand new lineup twice and still not see everyone. In an environment like this, where there's only 1 match to prepare, just so everyone can kind of understand the process behind the scenes, how are you evaluating that high number of people, especially when really you're competing for a few spots or a few general areas? So what is the overall camp like when there is just the 1 match, and how you decide to pick your team?
You could say everyone minus Sydney. I have massively rotated. So I would argue there's been an ongoing assessment with that group. In many ways, I think, besides what was going on off the pitch, you look at the performances in the She Believes, I'd credited a lot of it to that, but I'd also credit to chopping and changing partnerships. When you come into an international environment, you need flow. And so that's cost us a little bit, you could say. And so I think 2 things. 1, the players have pretty much all been assessed, and of course there's ongoing assessment from that. But 2, what we do know, and it was a massive learning when I reviewed all of our former World Cups compared to Olympics, the lead-in time to a World Cup game is completely different to what this team generally operates on, both in CONCACAF tournaments, in Olympic games, where you have a 2-day lead-in. At the moment, going into our opening game against Nigeria, we have a 4-day lead-in. And so what we've done with the design of this camp is to make sure we replicate, and we've designed how that is going to look in the World Cup. We'll rehearse all of that and the processes that go with it. It's to get us ready to how we're going to prepare for a World Cup. And in that process, through all the training sessions, it'll give good minutes to people in positions that, you know, maybe have only seen 5-10 minutes in the odd game here and there, to also be seen. So I think it's a blend of trying to get everything out so close to a World Cup. But I do believe if you look at the roster, they've all had a lot of time over the last sort of qualifiers and beyond to step on the pitch and be assessed. It's a case of seeing where they're at right now. Yeah, so we've been a little bit injury plagued, you could say. Obviously, what I will touch on is the loss of Janine Beckie. I think everybody, a bit like me, took that big gulp when that moment happened. And Janine, the leadership she's shown off the pitch, on the pitch, her versatility, you know, we've lost a big loss there. And then you look at the likes of Nichelle and Diane, that would be 3 starting Olympic wingers that have been plagued with long-term injury. So Janine's obviously out. Nichelle, it'll be very, very tight for anyone that, you know, understands that injury. It's very tight, and I'm going to wait as long as I can, and I've assured Nichelle of the same. She's doing everything she can, and it's progressing really well, but that'll be very tight. Diane obviously isn't in this camp, not ready yet, and again will be reasonably tight on that front. And then Desiree Scott, you know, has had an injury, and again will be pretty close to World Cup selection as well around when full return happens. So I think at the end of the day, as a coach, I've got to prepare with and without these players. My hope and my wish, particularly with the players that we're talking about, is that they are at this World Cup. We need them. And what I would say is, will they be 100%? Probably not, some of them. But the question I've got to ask myself is a player who's not at 100% still got bigger things to offer to this team? And so that's going to be the balancing act of April helping us prepare without them, but, you know, the hope and everything to make sure that, you know, some of those players are in. Shalina is an illness that, to be honest, she was struggling with it, that we don't really know in She Believes. But we've decided to take the bigger picture view with Shalina to make sure that she is back on the pitch with Tottenham, obviously, before she comes in with us. What I will also add is we've had a couple of players that are in the roster who've had concussion protocols and things. So we don't have 100% full healthy squad going into the April window, but you know, all things going well, anybody that's been selected can get on that pitch. Yeah, it's a difficult one. You know, probably the players and the outside world don't see this, but whenever you plan your subs and things going into a game, Janine just fills so many places. You know, you can move her, as you've seen, left back, left wing, right wing. She's played the 10 before. She's even played the 9. So her versatility and her ability to last back to back 90 minutes is, you know, there's very few players in the team who can actually do that. So that's a huge loss, and it is hard to replace. You know, I can sit here and say, yeah, we've got the answer. We don't. I think that's the reality. But what I think we do have to do is utilize the best players in the team across the pitch, and that's what I'm working through right now. I'll get to have a look at it in France, to say, how can I get my best players on the pitch, or then, you know, to try and adapt to that, and maybe some of the tactics that are needed to then also adapt to that. So it's difficult, but it gives a great opportunity. I think fullbacks, wingers, you've seen some of the new faces, the young players. With Janine out, that gives a massive opportunity. And then, God forbid, but hopefully I'm praying that the likes of Nichelle and Diane are back. But if they are, there's still, you know, a gap there with the Janine loss. And so, yeah, I think it's hard. It's impossible to replace, if I'm being completely honest. But, you know, I think beyond that, Janine, I think I'll do anything to get Janine to the world. You know, you've seen her. She did an incredible job on TV for the Men's World Cup. I think, you know, I've internally been talking about, is there something we can do where she can have a role with the team, given our leadership and our recent, you know, leadership off the pitch, where we can utilize some other skill sets, because I was just heartbroken for her. Luckily, when she did it, I was due to go to the Portland OL Reign game, so I got to give her a hug, and, you know, it is heartbreaking, but that's football. Yeah, I think, you know, she's a very positive person for anyone that knows Janine, like the nicest, most positive person. And so there'll be ups and downs. And I think that was my message, to expect them ups and downs. I think she'll, she's heading to Miami to do her surgery and things like that. And, when you're in the sunshine, it does help. But I think, yeah, she's determined. She's willing to help off the pitch. I know that's already happening and still happening. But I think now she's just focused on coming back stronger. And I think that's the mentality you'll always get with her. Oh, absolutely. I've got to say, I'm over the moon. I think we all on this call will agree Jayde's talent, speed, she's an incredible fullback. I think, yeah, there's been, my reflection on the She Believes was, obviously we've had a lot of changes to whether it be injuries and partnerships. And I think to get Jayde back in, she won't be 100% because she won't have played any minutes, so she might this weekend. But to just have her in and integrated in the group and see how she's looking is going to be great. I know the group are excited to have her back in, and it'll be great to see where she's at ahead of the World Cup. But I'm just pleased she made this window. Yeah, I think to answer the faces that are in, the new faces, the spots are there for the taking. I think I only, in my mind, really fold in players at this point, this late in the piece, that I think, could make that push. And you talked there about Sydney Collins. She was so close to making the She Believes roster. I've got to be honest. She, never worked with her, but we had recommendations about her. She then got drafted. And when she came in, and I've got to say, she straight away impressed me, has incredible athleticism. At college career, she played a lot of centre-back, but actually, I think full-back as well could be, she's played US under-23s at full-back before, and I think she's just got pace, technical ability, and a mindset to defend. So she's got a really bright future. So, the door's wide open. You look at Amanda Allen, young, she'll be going to the under-20 qualifiers after our April camp. Had a really good run for the under-17s. Again, you talk about the future Janine type player. I think an Amanda Allen has an engine and a similar profile. It's just how soon will she be able and ready, but the door again is open there. And then, I don't need to speak to the likes of, for me, as Simi has come in and done incredibly well. She's only starting, and I think that's the most exciting thing for me. For someone like Simi, her ceiling is so high, and I don't even think we've touched anywhere near where she can get to. So the door's open for any new player. And then what I would say, I purposely, because of the injuries, will be leaving it as long as I can to name the roster. Between now, April camp, and when I have to name the roster, is a whole load of games where week in, week out, we're watching, and people, can have a bad camp. We understand that. There's often, the last camp I remember before the Olympic Games was a horrible camp because the pressure's there to perform to get your spot. But I think my assurances to the players will be all the camps we've had, and then your performance at a club in between that is really critical. I think the fullback position, you can see that in the number of fullbacks that have been named, trying to decide on the final sort of one or two spots. The winger position, I think now is a little bit open because of, the different questions we've got to ask. I think what you'll see from the roster is we've got a lot of players who can play dual positions, midfield. So the midfield, although it looks, quite light, you look at the players who've played in there, Christine Sinclair, I think some of the fullbacks can play in that position. I'd argue Jayde Rose can play, you could argue anyway, but centre-back, fullback, and I think should be a great holder midfield player too. So I think there's a lot of options, and it's just picking the right one for what we have available to us based on starters, finishers, and working through that by the end of this April camp, and then watching performances. So I would say definitely the fullback position is there for the taking. You've got the winger scenario of if these players are back and if they're not, for sure. I think they're probably two critical positions. So I think for the Olympics, you would have heard the change the colour of the medal, which in my mind meant gold or silver, although I'm sure we all took silver off the table. I think for the World Cup, you'll have heard the analogy of we're going to climb the biggest mountain on the planet or in the world. And I think, you look at the history of this team in the past decade, they've generally got round of 16, quarterfinals, Our push now is to break the back of that, like to definitely, I would love, and I believe this team should podium at a World Cup. Now, there's some curveballs around all of that as to what's gone on this year and the injuries, but on our day, I believe in every ounce of this team that we can go and be successful at this World Cup, and that'll be our aim. We'll give it everything we can. Do I think it'll be easy? No, I think it's full of top European opposition, particularly. I think the US, you've seen they've hit in their stride. So there's some tough obstacles in our way, and you look at our path, but at the end of the day, on our day, I believe this team can beat anybody.